believe we're going over to Dr. Uhura Williams and my colleague Ben Trong too. So tossing it you all over to you, and thank you everybody. Nice to meet you, Miss Rosenburg. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you, David. Thank you. And Ron, thank you so much. Good to see you, my friend. Good to have Minnesota educators taking part in this 24-hour teach-in. We have the opportunity now to be in conversation with Ms. Sari Beth Rosenburg, a phenomenal New York City school teacher, influencer, activist, educator extraordinaire. And we're going to be in conversation with Ben as well. So, Sari, let's just jump right into this. What we wanted to talk to you about specifically, and this has been your platform for a while now, using social media to raise consciousness about issues of racial justice and social justice. Let's begin at the beginning. Why is this so important to you? Where does this passion come from?
So the passion comes from, and it's going to sound corny, but sometimes the most corny things are true. It comes from my students. I've been teaching and first of all, I just want to thank you for inviting me today. And I'm so excited to be a part of this action, taking action. And it's something I've been doing online for a while, and it's great to be doing it online in this format, and maybe one day in person. But yeah, so I've been teaching this is my 21st year. I'm about to complete my 21st year at the High School for Environmental Studies in New York City Public High School. And it's my students. I'm off, up until really even to this day, I'm Jewish, but I'm often the only white person in the room. And I've had a growing platform for various reasons. And especially in, 2015, 2016, 2017, I just started realizing it was just so crucial that I speak out and be a voice for my students and now other educators and school staff members across the country, and parents and students whose rights, whose freedom to learn, read books, read curriculum is being taken away through legislation, including in Florida.
Great point. I'm going to bring Ben into this conversation. Ben, do you mind introducing yourself? And what we want to talk to you about specifically, Sari, there's no better person on the planet to talk to about this, is how you use social media platform to take action. And so we really want to drill down with that. Ben?
Absolutely. Hi. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited and honored to have this conversation with you. I think as someone who has grown up with technology but chooses not to use social media, I'm actually really curious, because I'm in this work, but I'm actually really curious, how would you describe the intent behind how to use social media to drive towards action? Because I feel like there's multiple ways that people do it, right? Like they want to amplify, they want to raise awareness, or they want to actually move people towards opportunities, And so what is your intent? And do you find your intent changing as you see the impact of your social media act grow?
Yeah, so I have some slides set up, so I can walk you. Do you want me to walk you through it a little bit? I promise to not make this too slide heavy, because I'm a teacher. I'm mindful of that. So, really, I want to address the first thing you said. I just have some examples here, and I can share these slides with people later. But yeah, so this is just some of the ways that I'm online and reasons I'm online. But basically, I'll just go into so your question is basically how I'm using social media and how I've been doing it. So, I would say it really started, one way that I've been doing it is through these PBS NewsHour classroom Zooms, and Dr. Williams has been a frequent guest on here. We went on there live the day after the Capitol riots to contextualize it in history. Dr. Williams was also on there talking about his book about Jackie Robinson and other works. But the reason why I really think, and honestly, I think you're probably more sane than me because you're not online, because it definitely is, it wears on you, right? But I just can't stop myself, because here's the thing. I'm not saying the conversations aren't happening offline, like they're happening offline as well, but a lot of them are happening online. And so, I can be a conduit for you if you don't want to be online to go on there and share what I'm hearing. And honestly, one of the reasons why that keeps me on there, even though it often, and Dr. Williams knows this, can drive me insane, is that unfortunately, not really unfortunately, the right wing is on there galvanizing and creating their toxic and false narratives. And yes, the majority of people aren't on Twitter, actually, although it feels like that sometimes, but it is where the media is picking up news spots and things that they're going to throw up on their headlines. And I kind of just decided to throw myself in the middle of it. So this is some of my social media, and I'm not going to lie, like my Instagram at one point wasn't political. And it was much more relaxing to post like workout selfies and me out with my friends. But somewhere along the line, it became a place where I drop all my tweets and threads, and then also my TikToks that I make. But I would say the main place where I'm jumping into it is on Twitter. And so, and also something I recommend for people watching, educators who might not feel, here's where you might want to go, right? And it's called Substack. And I got into Substack when I started realizing I wanted to like kind of wean myself off of Twitter. I'm still on there, but unfortunately, Substack is a great kind of place in the middle where educators can go if they don't want to feel like every time they post something, someone's on there to attack them. And I've been using that a lot as well. So the last one I did, I haven't had time this week. I wrote about the E. Jean Carroll verdict, and I'm always connecting it to my students. So it's called Yo Miss, and that's it if you want to see it. But I'll give you some examples, and you can feel free to jump in and cut me off if you want to follow up on this stuff. But some examples of my posts, I have two, because I always like to come in with evidence and receipts. So these are some of my tweets that I put out there. And like I was saying, it is where the media is. I'm not sure how long because of the fascist far right guy who's taken over Twitter, but for a while now, and I don't have a blue check anymore. Don't worry. Like, no way am I paying for that. I did not pay for that. It's like having a red hat next to my name. But a lot of these tweets ended up blowing up, and they were inspired by educators. They were inspired by people in our community. They were inspired by my students. And sometimes, I'm called a groomer sometimes online, but not as much because I'm in New York City and people actually respect our work for the most part here. And they're not trying to take away teachers' rights, but they are in states like Florida and other states as well. And so I often just get really angry and go on Twitter. And then the ones that resonate with people do blow up. And I don't really see it as like an ego thing. It's more like, I feel like I'm a conduit for other educators and students and parents who are frustrated with what's going on and see public education as we know it getting, whittled away in some places. So just some examples of, so I've tweeted, these are some recent ones, like this one right here, in between teaching, like during my break, I think it was the shooting at the Tennessee school. And I tweeted this, put my phone in my pocket. And a lot of times I don't really think, I want this to be viral, because that's not about making a viral tweet. It's just like, I want to put it out there how people are feeling. And this one definitely resonated with a lot of people about, what's killing kids. Wokeness isn't killing kids. Books aren't killing kids. Lessons about history and racism aren't killing kids. Learning about gay and queer people isn't as well. It's the guns, right? So one example, I'm going to just flip to this. That ends up just kind of showing you how the media. So, okay, this one, for example, I got definitely prevalent and something that inspired this teaching was the fact that, we learned that DeSantis is now banned the AP African American Studies course in Florida. And I was really frustrated with the fact that College Board didn't respond right away. And so I tweeted this, and I also teach a College Board class. So I could put myself, they're not going to say you can't teach it anymore, but I think I have freedom of speech online, and I just use my platform. And what I tweeted ended up getting picked up in a Forbes article. I have moments where I'm like, oh, what was that tweet? But it does. So this is just proof that the media is seeing it. Here's one where Fox News saw it. I've been going on to TikTok more often, and I made a TikTok about when I heard the news that Arizona set up their very own hotline, where you could rat out teachers for teaching about racism, because that's what really it is, right? And I just, and I don't have that many followers on TikTok, so I don't know how they found this, but there I am on Fox News. And that was all because of what I put out there on Twitter. I think I tweeted it out, right? So my point is that whether we like it or not, mainstream media, or the traditional news networks, the cable networks, and the websites are looking on Twitter and looking on TikTok for news. And if only the right-wing forces are out there, that's going to drive the narrative. And what's so funny is that, like, in just not surprised at all, Fox News said that I was an Arizona teacher. So they, which actually helped me. So I didn't have crazy people calling my New York City school. But it says here, one Arizona teacher who scrutinized the measure in a viral TikTok. Also, the TikTok wasn't viral. So, like, two things they got wrong: accused the state of implementing the hotline due to white supremacy. And I got him, the Arizona school superintendent, they played my TikTok and he responded to it and said that he is not a white supremacist. Because if you say you're not, right? So those are just some examples of it. And I'm going to stop sharing this so we can go back, so we don't just have slides the whole time, because that can get boring.
Go ahead, Ben. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was actually gonna let you go first, but I just thought that was like really cool, the way that like you've done the things to show that like the personal is political and the political is personal, right? There is no separation for you. And that's like what we're seeing right now, like both online and offline, there's like that, none of that distinction matters anymore. Like who you are is who you are on both. There's layers, of course, but I think that I actually had a question as you were going through the slides. It's like, because you have woven all of these spheres of your life together, like, did you notice a difference in your education, like not your education, my bad, like how you practice teaching after, you embody this other role of being an activist? Like, how did students see you differently? How did your colleagues treat you differently? Because like you're saying that you're a conduit, but like you're not just that, like you're putting your name to these words, to these stances, like you're taking a side, right? So like, how did that shift how you were as an educator?
So I really do, much contrary to popular belief for my trolls, I really do try to, yes, the political is personal, the personal is political. And I'm inspired by my students in the ways that their lives, if they were living in a different state, would be impacted by this, by their education. But I try, I mean, it's not like I don't put my tweets up on my board, and I do try to, unless, I do attempt to, and I think I successfully try to not bring my politics into the classroom. I mean, like the previous speaker was saying, I let the primary sources and the texts do the talking, and provide my students with critical thinking skills to come to conclusions themselves. But I do think that, I mean, I can't help the fact that I'm public, right? Like my Twitter's public. Sometimes the kids will say, like, "Miss, like your TikTok popped up on my For You feed," right? And so I just kind of have to own it. And so I did try to create a line between it, but I early on have embraced the fact that, like, teachers have tried to make their social media private, and I respect that, but I didn't from the start, because one of the reasons I didn't is that I want to conduct myself in a way that wherever I am, I'm being my authentic self, and I'm representing for the people that I teach, right? So like, I'll never put anything online that I'm scared for them to see, so whether it is me working out, I think that's empowering to my students, and they see that, or speaking out against something that we've been teaching in history classes. I've been doing that for 21 years, teaching about people who, and groups that have spoken out when things that are just explicitly wrong are happening. So I'm not ashamed for my students to see that I'm speaking out against against book bans and against people's freedoms to learn and freedoms to see themselves in the text and the lessons and everything that happens in class. And so, yes, students have seen things. And I think that it makes them feel safer in my classroom, first of all. And also maybe I'm hoping it'll inspire some of them to speak out if they feel comfortable. But I always like to say that like one-on-one conversations are ways that you can enact change as well. You don't have to be like putting your whole face and name out there like I do. There's other ways to do it. And I think that's important to emphasize.
Sarah, you've sustained some pretty vicious attacks online. I know you and I have been friends for quite a while, and certainly I follow you and have appreciated your work in that space. And for some educators, particularly in states like Florida and Virginia, there's some real fear around that level of activism. What advice would you give specifically to folks who are in these battleground states in terms of using social media as a platform? We heard from Samuel Yokel, for example, yesterday about his plight, which he shared on social media, didn't quite get the reaction and kind of the attention. What are some practical things that you could share in terms of? So
first of all, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, knocking on wood, I'm in a union. I'm in New York City. And I also am not going to, I mean, I might, there's all kinds, but for the most part, I teach at a really progressive school in New York City. So I am coming from a point of privilege that I can do this, right? And so the first thing I would say is, teachers are being forced, see themselves being forced to choose between their paychecks and their principles. But here's the thing, don't feel badly if you don't feel safe speaking out online. So it's just practical, right? Like teachers are in this profession. It's a job, right? It pays the bills. So, and then if you're not in the classroom, that's one less amazing teacher who's there like on the ground advocating and working with students. So my first piece of advice, it's maybe not cool, but it's like, protect yourself, right? Don't put yourself in the line of fire. I mean, think of the bigger picture, why you're doing this. You don't want to lose your job unless you have a backup plan, right? So that's why I feel galvanized, especially to keep doing this, because for now I'm safe. And I say that for now because that's the slippery slope of what's happening state by state. But right now I'm okay. Hopefully New York City stays progressive. So that's like my one piece of advice that isn't that fun. It's like, don't put yourself in unsafe situations online, because I know people who aren't teachers or who just get out there and speak their mind politically, who it becomes real world, like them getting doxxed, getting their address thrown out online. And if you live in a house in a rural area, that's really especially scary, but it's scary in general. So I would say put your safety first, but in terms of like, if you feel safe and you just are like, whatever, this is more important to me right now, just speak from the heart and be authentic, and, don't do it because you're trying to get clout and likes. Like, don't think of it that way. Just see it as, I want to get my message out there. I think and if one person sees it, realize that could make a difference, right? Don't think in terms of like, oh, only like 5 people liked my post. That doesn't matter. Those 5 people, it resonated with them, and who knows if they'll share it with other people. So I think that's the other piece of advice I have as well. Like, don't get caught up in the numbers, but also don't put your job on the line, because that goes without saying. It's not practical or smart.
Ben, you get the last question.
All right. So something's been niggling at me for a while. So in Action Academy, which is like our youth program that we have to lead college-age students into civic work, we have a whole segment on mis and disinformation, because that is how crucial it is right now to navigate civics online, right? Especially using social media. And like, as I'm sure, as someone who's like involved in both sides, as an educator and as someone on social media, like, how do you personally practice like mitigating misinformation and disinformation. But then also, how are you translating some of those practices to your classroom? Because there's like media literacy that I bet you touch on, right? So kind of very curious about how you marry those two things.
Well, I mean, I think that what I'm noticing with the generation that I'm teaching is that they're much more hyper aware of that. And they're fact checking me sometimes, like, because they're all on their laptops and they can easily just look it up and see if what I'm saying is true, right? Like, and this even happened yesterday where we were talking to them about the requirements for state regents exams, and one kid within three seconds was like, actually, that's not true. The website for the state says X, Y, and Z. So maybe I just teach a really sassy population, and maybe it's backfire, right? Like they're so good at critical thinking that they're like, we don't have to take that test, miss. But I will say that, I think that the one piece of advice I have is just encourage kids, because they are on TikTok, and that's a lot of that's where they come to me and say, oh, I just learned about this person. And then I think that I always remind them they have to read. They can't read vertically, they should be reading horizontally, right? They should be before they even go through the article, they should look up the author, look up the news site. Is this is this a more center? Is this a more left-wing site? Who is this author? Look up their Twitter, look up what else they've written about. And so the whole idea, and I think that students do that already, but the ones who don't, that's something that I encourage them to do right away. And I think it's helpful for them. Like, this whole idea is like, before reading the article or even watching the video, like, click on that creator and see what they've been saying about other things. Does that align with the truth? Right. And I think you're right. It's so increasingly important that we keep teaching kids that there is truth, because right now we're seeing that I'm so worried for them, and I'm worried for not just young people but adults as well, because let's be honest, it's the adults who are the ones who are on Facebook, not to stereotype, who get duped by like these fake articles and fake news, as they call it, all the time. So I don't think it's just young people who need to learn critical thinking skills and learn how to check their sources. I think it's entire population. And as we head into the 2024 presidential election, as AI, now I sound old, as AI and deep fakes are going to become really difficult. It's going to not just be about the text you read, but the images you look at, right? So I think it's crucial that we don't just educate young people about critical thinking and making sure they're like checking their sources, even the images they see. It has to be adults as well.
Sari, I want to thank you again for getting up so early and spending this time with us. Just want to mention very quickly, if you're in New York City, you can catch Sari Friday night in conversation with Fred Gutenberg on his new book on gun violence. Thank you for your work around that issue, as well as around racial justice. And of course, we all follow you on social media, and we'll continue to do so. So thank you for your work.
Thanks so much for having me.